Hi, I'm Maria, and I'm 20 years old. Do you have a goal in life? Are you willing to take a big risk to achieve it? Are you prepared to deal with the consequences if your bet doesn't play? Watch the video to the end and find out how I literally lost my face in the pursuit of the role of my dreams. Once I came across an announcement of casting. They were looking for actresses for a video about social adaptation, a supporting role, but everybody starts somewhere. I was determined, even though I saw the ad at the last moment. After all, there was only one requirement. By selection day, everyone had to be tan as if they were born and raised in Miami. Of course, I ran to a tanning salon. I was pale and I didn't like beaches. I should have fixed it in record time. It was a matter of hours, not even days. There was a high probability that after a single session, the tan would not show much, and to strengthen it, I had to take additional measures. I bought a sunscreen with formic acid and smeared almost the entire tube. The instructor strongly recommended to undergo several sessions for a uniform and gradual tan, but that was out of the question. The casting was still a few hours away. Then I was convinced that with light and sensitive skin, to achieve a strong tan at a time could be simply dangerous. I was a little scared, to be honest, because my skin was really very sensitive and I burnt instantly in the sun. My hands were already starting to peel off from the dryer. But I was not going to back down. The dream was higher than all these circumstances, so I had to look haughty. I was an actress after all, and say that I knew better what my skin type was and what to do with it. They believed me, but the argument took up a lot of time, which was not enough. Have you ever felt that every breath brings you closer to being late? I went to the casting straight from the tanning salon, glancing at my watch every now and then. Of course, the taxi was stuck in a terrible traffic jam just when I needed to hurry. As if it wasn't enough, it was too hot. If I hadn't been in such a hurry, I could have been grilled without the tanning salon. There was nothing to breathe, especially in the car. And then, either from dryness or from nerves, my whole body began to itch terribly. At first, I thought that the sunscreen with formic acid gave such a reaction and I just needed to endure the itch, but it only got worse. In the end, I couldn't stand it and scratched my face. Suddenly, I felt something strange under my nails. I looked closely and realized that it was my skin. The skin was in huge chunks under the nails. At the same time, there were dark stains on my hand. I took out a mirror and almost turned gray with horror. I looked like a Dalmatian. So much for casting. Who will need me with such a face? Thank God I had my makeup bag with me. I feverishly covered the white spots on my face with tonic, but the traffic jam still did not move. Then my friend Kate called from the casting and said that everything was about to start and I needed to hurry. A feeling of despair covered my head. I had no choice but to get out of the taxi with a skinned cheek, rent a bicycle, and rush as fast as possible to the production set, towards my dream. I couldn't miss this chance no matter what. I managed to arrive, but the casting was already over and everyone was going home. Suddenly, a director came up to me and asked what was wrong with my face. I explained through tears and asked them to give me one chance. I didn't suffer for nothing. And he started laughing. All the supporting roles were already taken, no chance. And then he suddenly suggested that I try out for the lead role. Like, I had skin problems now, and according to the script, the heroine had such troubles with her face that she wore a cardboard mask. I had never heard such a rude joke in my life. Just a little more, and he would offer to put a package on my head. In the evening, Kate called. She didn't pass the casting either, but my condition was worse. I burst into tears and told her everything. How my skin peeled off, how my face hurt, that I didn't know when I would find a new role, and that the director also made fun of me. My friend listened to me and told me not to fool around but to go to the casting. Unlike me, she managed to read the script. The director told me the truth. She recounted everything she had learned about the main character. A horror movie, not a story. I was afraid that I might also have a serious illness. What if I become disabled? What if it never goes away and I'm no longer an actress? After saying goodbye to my friend, I dragged myself to the bathroom to clean up. A mangy monster stared back at me from the mirror. He didn't have a face, only colored streaks, scraps of skin, and bloody scratches. It itched very much. It was much worse than in the morning, and so fast. I was no longer upset. I was terrified. Screw casting. I hurried to the doctor. Have you ever felt that all your problems are forgotten because something even worse has happened? This was the case. I was so scared that I didn't think about how people looked at me in the street and forgot about the morning's failure. The doctor calmed me down. There was no accident, but I literally burned my skin and had to be treated for a very long time. I was given a long list of recipes and forbidden to touch my face. It still burned, and after applying the ointments, it got even worse. I was going to go mad before this went away. Trying to distract myself, I pulled out cardboard and paint. Art heals the soul, right? I wondered what I would do about it and remembered the director's words. I cut out the mask, laughing hysterically. Kate, in response to a selfie sent, advised me to go to the next casting. It was a joke, of course, but then I wondered if I wanted to go at all. On one hand, it was a chance to get the main role. On the other hand, I myself was disgusted to look in the mirror, and here on the camera, I would burn with shame. I googled photos of people with skin diseases. To say that I was shocked was to say nothing. If I was in so much pain that I could barely distract myself, how did they feel? They always lived like this. I was afraid people would point fingers at me, but I would forget it in a month, and they lived with it. Someone from childhood, or how did they go to school? Children can be so mean. Then I realized I wanted to be in this video. Such stories needed to be told, and since I had been called, I would try to participate in it. I actually came to the casting in a cardboard mask. People did look at me and laugh, but not because I was a freak. It was much easier that way. Maybe the heroine of the film felt the same way and wore the stupid mask to control the situation. Of course, the mask had to be removed during the tests. The director was in shock. Yesterday, everything was not so bad. I gave it my all and got the part. I really wanted to think that not only because of the face, but also because of the effort. I was quite happy with myself. And then I heard the director joking with the makeup artists about the fact that they didn't need to do the Dalmatian makeup, less work for everyone. What a scoundrel! I felt like a leper again. I decided to go to the boiler to drink water and calm down a little. I tried to think of my heroine. She lived with such humorists all her life. She was proud and brave. I could do that too. At the boiler, I ran into a girl in a wide-brimmed hat. I hit that hat and it slid to the side, revealing my face. What I saw looked like a mirror. Not the face itself, but its condition. In fact, her skin was much worse than mine, and I didn't really want to look at it anymore. But she couldn't look away. Was it makeup or something? In fact, it was Lucy, the real prototype of the story. She agreed to participate in the shooting to make sure that her illness was described correctly. She had already been told about me and my successful problem, and she wanted to get acquainted. I just nodded back, still staring like a fool. Fortunately, she didn't take offense. We talked for a long time, and Lucy was very supportive. And suddenly, she said that it was harder for me now. She was used to being herself, but I was afraid of both her face and my own. I had a lot to think about. I walked home with a mask, and people watched me go. As I passed the shop windows, I noticed a wide-brimmed hat on the mannequin, almost identical to Lucy's. And of course, I bought it, not to get into the role, but to take an example from her. The shooting was successful, and I learned to ignore the director's tactlessness. My skin had healed just in time for the video release, and I was watching it, already getting used to my healthy face again, and I saw not myself on the screen, but Lucy. I still continue to wear a hat. I feel more confident in it, and it also saves my skin from the sun after that experiment. Did you like my story? Then put likes and subscribe to the channel. And to avoid missing new episodes, click the bell icon. I wish you strength and health. Value yourself. no matter what others do.
Hi, my name is Susan, and I'm 18. Have you ever faced difficulties because of your appearance? Have you ever felt different? I felt, despite the fact that I did not face direct mockeries. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn how to live with a height of only 4 feet. As you can see, I really wasn't tall. I'm only 4 feet tall. These are the consequences of an accident that I got into when I was still a child and stopped growing. But that doesn't stop me from living. I have friends, a boyfriend, and a hobby. I love science, especially physics, and I've not encountered bullying. I met my boyfriend a little over a year ago when he transferred to our school. His name is Steven. He didn't mind my height, and our relationship developed so well that a year later, after graduating from high school, we decided to move in together. And that's where the problems started. At home, he took care of me, helped me with everything. And at first, of course, I liked it. But then he started to go too far. I could no longer make my own breakfast or dress. He immediately jumped up and forced his help. And when I went out, he called me every half hour and got mad if I was late. Have you ever lived with your other half? If yes, has the relationship between you changed? He explained his behavior by saying that he was worried about me. But I'm not a child or a cripple. I can take care of myself. I tried to tell him that, but he didn't seem to hear me. Then it got worse. One day, we went to the central park of our city just to walk and talk. A group of several people was walking towards us. When Kevin saw them, he let go of my hand, and his face changed. He blushed and lowered his head. When they saw him, they came up and greeted him. It turned out to be some kids from his old school that he hadn't seen since he left. When they asked him to introduce me, he was embarrassed and said that we were in the same class. He didn't tell them that I was his girlfriend. I was in shock. Is he ashamed of me? One of the guys made a crack about me, something like, "I thought you already had a daughter." Steven laughed and said I was too small to be his daughter. After a little more conversation, we parted from them. I was startled. Not only didn't he stand up for me, but he also agreed with these brutes when they made fun of me. I tried to understand him and not be offended and to pay attention to it in the hope that this would not happen again. However, I couldn't help thinking that my boyfriend was ashamed of me. That was the first time I felt handicapped. The only thing that distracted me from these thoughts was science. But even with that, the difficulties began. After graduating from high school, I decided to study with a tutor for a year before going to university in order to pass the entrance exams. I met twice a week with the teacher who taught me physics. Steven was well aware of this. But for some reason, at one point, when I started to get ready for class, he made a scene. He said that I went to the tutor too often and that I should be taught by a woman, not a young man. I didn't know what to say, and I kept packing. He knew how important this was to me. What questions could there be? My silence made him angry, and he tried to snatch the backpack out of my hands. He said I wasn't going anywhere, and that he would find me a tutor for my gender. I couldn't stand it. We started fighting. I shouted at him that he had no right to control me, and he was sure that he had to do it. He kept reducing everything to my height, and I was very offended by it. In the end, he even said that with my health problems, I should just give up the idea of becoming a scientist. When I heard this, I froze, not believing that he could say such a thing. I took my notebooks and I left. After class, I decided to think about it. I realized that even though he was acting awful, I loved him, and maybe he was just worried about me. I decided to become more feminine for him. I started wearing heels to appear taller and started wearing more makeup. I tried to be polite and affectionate. I also cut back on my physics classes to spend more time with him. However, he either took these efforts for granted or even laughed at me when he saw me in a new feminine outfit. I felt that his attitude towards me remained the same, and it was very depressing for me. I no longer knew what to do to make him perceive me as a complete human being. Have you ever been in such a situation? Have you ever felt that your loved one doesn't appreciate you and treats you like a stupid child? Soon, my hope that a relationship would improve was completely extinguished. At one point, I picked up his phone to call the tutor and warn him that my mobile was dead and I would be late. As I held it in my hands, a notification appeared on the screen, a message from a pretty girl. I knew this was wrong, but my curiosity and anxiety got the better of me. I opened his text with trembling hands. I wish I hadn't known. In his texts for this girl, he constantly complained about me, that I was obsessed with studying, that I was boring, that he was tired of hiding me from his friends. The same messages he wrote to a couple of his close friends and, believe it or not, another girl. Moreover, he constantly paid them both compliments and courted them in every way. How it pained me to see it! Out of anger and resentment, I threw the phone against the wall. Stephen came to check it out. When he saw that I was crying and his phone was broken, he seemed to understand immediately. He started making excuses, saying that he didn't really think the way he wrote, but I didn't want to listen to him. I realized I didn't want to see him again. Trying to hold back tears, I picked up my backpack and packed it with the most necessary things. Stephen tried to stop me, but I just pushed him away. I went to see my friend Lily. We met at a photo exhibition that she organized. She works as a manager in a fashion agency. When I told her about it, she told me that I should never stay in this relationship. In her opinion, Stephen's behavior destroyed my self-esteem and dreams. I knew she was right, but I couldn't accept it. Stephen and I had been together for so long, and it was so hard to believe that it would end like this. Lily said that she had an idea to help me take my mind off it. The agency where she worked was looking for people to shoot a project about people with disabilities and unusual appearance. I never even thought of acting, but I agreed, thinking it might be fun. Soon after, Lily sent me to a photo casting session. She told me not to take it seriously, but just to relax and have fun. After casting, I sat in the hallway and waited for the results. Soon, the manager came out, selected 2 girls, and sent the others home, including me. Of course, I was upset, although I tried not to expect anything. Lily met me at home. When she saw that I was upset, she apologized and said that she seemed to have made it worse. I tried to say, "It's all right, Lily," but I was secretly thinking that I wasn't good enough here either. However, that evening, I received a message from this agency. It read, "One of the selected models will not be able to participate in the shooting, and you were the next applicant." This meant that I was being taken. I was very happy and grateful to Lily for helping me. Soon, the shooting took place. I was very pleased to feel beautiful and interesting for someone. When I was being shot, I made faces and assumed silly poses. It was really great. The photographer was laughing with me, and I felt so confident for the first time. All this time, I kept thinking about Stephen, and participating in the shoot really helped me understand that I was only holding on to him because of my inner insecurity and fear that no one else would like me. So I thought it was over. Lily suggested that I stay with her, and I gladly agreed. I also got a call from the agency and was offered to continue participating in the shooting, but I refused. It was great, but my passion was science, and I continued to study even harder than before. However, there was something else that I decided to devote time to. When I saw at the casting how upset the other girls who were not accepted were, I realized that I was not the only one facing problems because of my appearance. Lily and I decided to open a hotline to support those who face abuse and bullying based on appearance and physical disabilities. We regularly get calls from people who need help, and we support them as much as we can. If you like this story, then like and subscribe to the channel. Love and appreciate yourself. Hi, my name is Emily, and I am 15 years old. Have you ever been in a situation when your worst nightmares and fears became real? Did you feel like you were going crazy, but you couldn't tell anyone? This is exactly the situation I found myself in. Better watch the video to the end, and you will learn how at night the worms came out of me. When I was a child, I often had the same nightmare. In it, I lay motionless in bed and watched hundreds of worms ate me from the inside out. The reason for this nightmare was due to an unsuccessful prank. One day, when I came back from gym, I opened my locker and found a bunch of worms in it. Before I knew what was happening, I was pushed into it and locked in. I screamed in fear and begged to be released, but to no avail. Worms were everywhere and literally crawling all over my body, and I didn't notice how I lost consciousness. I woke up at home. The teacher called my mother and told her what had happened. My mother took me home, and my classmates were punished and expelled from school. Justice was served. But the phobia remained with me forever. Now I'm in high school. I forgot about that joke a long time ago. All my childhood nightmares and fears have passed, as I thought. But I was so wrong. Have you ever faced fears from childhood and adulthood? Then you will understand me for sure. Once, in biology class, the teacher assigned us a scientific project on the topic, the creatures that surround us. We randomly pulled out pieces of paper from a cap, with the name of a partner and the animal to study for a month. The failure started from the beginning. I was paired with Michael. He and his friends have been bullying me since I was a child. He didn't like it either, so we asked the teacher to change our partners. But she told us not to act like children and pull out a piece of paper with an animal on it. And here, I was unlucky too. Worms. For what? There is nothing worse than these disgusting creatures. Although we were lucky, because my mother was studying them. She was happy to help us and even allowed us to come into her lab. That meant that we would definitely pass the school project perfectly. In the lab, I immediately remembered a nightmare that I'd had as a child. I didn't even want to look at the worms, much less touch them. But I didn't want Michael to think that I was a coward, because then he would have another reason to tease me. So I continued to study them. Surprisingly, he also worked hard and even became friends with my mother. And he didn't bully me without his friends. Once, when my mother was cutting up worms to explain their structure to us, I felt sick. I thought I was going to throw up. I didn't show it and decided it was because of the unpleasant sight. So, when they went to lunch, I stayed to continue working, hoping that I would feel better. And I didn't want to worry my mother. But it didn't get any better. My head was very dizzy. There was a lump in my throat, and then everything went dark. When I woke up, I saw my mother and Michael, who were both looking worried, trying to revive me with ammonia. Turning my head, I noticed a broken jar from which hundreds of worms were crawling at me. I think I hit it when I fell unconscious. Startled and shocked, I jumped up and clutched Michael with tears in my eyes. I was scared and disgusted. He began to reassure me. Don't worry, I'm around. You'll be fine. I was surprised at how kind and caring he could be. My mother took me to the doctor. He said that I probably fainted because of the stress that I experienced because of the phobia, and prescribed me sedatives. That moment brought Michael and me closer. Children's resentment was gone. We began to communicate more, went to lunch together, and discussed common topics. He turned out to be an interesting person and tried to protect me from working with worms, taking all the dirty work for himself. And everything would be fine, but there was one problem. I started having my childhood nightmares again. and I increasingly began to experience unbearable headaches. I decided it was a side effect of the sedatives I'd started taking in double doses in the hope of getting rid of the nightmare. One day at lunch, Michael invited me to an amusement park for the weekend. He said that he wanted to thank me for my help with the project. I agreed with pleasure. After all these worms and nightmares, I just wanted to rest and relax. I wondered if this could be considered a date. Write what you think in the comments. And so, the weekend came. He met me at the house and we went. I will never forget this day. We had fun, went on rides, walked in the park, and talked about everything. That was the day I realized I liked Michael, and he seemed to feel the same way about me. At the end of the day, he decided to walk me home. All the way, we were uncomfortably silent because we did not notice that we began to hold hands. When we reached the house, he turned me to him and wanted to kiss me, and I closed my eyes. Then someone called out to him. They were his friends. They started asking what he was doing here with me and if he was going to kiss me. I turned to Michael, thinking that he would stand up for me, but he began to justify himself, saying that he would never kiss someone like me, and he accidentally met me and decided to remind me not to forget to add his name to the school project, because he would not do this. I was in shock. How so? Maybe our entire friendship was a long-term plan to break my heart? I slapped him and ran home with tears in my eyes. I was broken and depressed, so I decided to go to bed. I had a nightmare all night. When I woke up, I felt a strange sensation on my body. I looked at my stomach and saw worms. Hundreds, no, thousands. They crawled on top of me and were everywhere. I couldn't believe my eyes. Terrified, I jumped up and turned on the light. They were gone. I was scared. I couldn't understand what was happening to me. Was I going mad? Or maybe the worms were in me from the day I had fainted. After all, the nightmares started then, and the headaches got worse, and the pills didn't help. I decided not to tell anyone. I didn't want to worry my mother, and the school project was almost due. So, come what may. I didn't speak to Michael again, called and apologized, but I told him that he was still a jerk, and if he told his friends that he would not be involved in the project, then let him not be involved in it. I would finish it myself. We would pass it together, and then let him do what he wanted. The rest of the time, I had nightmares and woke up at night to see worms on me. It bothered me and drove me crazy, but I decided to wait until the project was completed first. The day of project completion arrived. Michael and I stood in front of the class and talked about our work. My head suddenly ached. I decided to ignore it and pass the project to the end. But then, I felt a painfully familiar feeling. I looked down at my hands in horror and saw hundreds of worms crawling over them and my body. But it only happened at night. Maybe I was still sleeping, and this was all one big nightmare? I started to panic. I tried to get them off my body. Michael excitedly grabbed me and asked what was wrong. When he heard about the worms on me, he said he couldn't see anything. But how? His friends started laughing at me and calling me crazy. And then he yelled at them, told them to shut up. Don't make fun of the girl I love. I didn't expect this from him. He stood up for me and confessed his love. But what a bad time it was. The pain became unbearable and I felt like I was fainting. I woke up in the hospital. I had an emergency checkup and found a tumor in my brain. The operation was required immediately as my condition was getting worse. After the operation, I came to myself in the ward, in hospital clothes and with my head bandaged. The doctor examined me and asked me how I was feeling, and then told me that all my hallucinations and headaches were caused by a tumor. My mother scolded me for not telling her anything, but she was glad that I was okay. Michael and I discussed everything. He promised me to stop communicating with his friends, and I promised that I would no longer hide anything from him. After the operation, the hallucinations disappeared. However, the headaches will stay with me for a while. I was discharged, but I'm supposed to be treated until I fully recover. I don't think I'm afraid of worms anymore. I realized that I was too focused on fear because I didn't even notice the disease that could have taken my life. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and let go of your fears.
Hi, my name is Sarah and I'm 20 years old. Tell me, have you ever eaten live shellfish or insect as a delicacy? How would you feel if something like this was eating you from the inside out? No, I'm not crazy. It's just that my pursuit of fame and money led me to do something rash that could have cost me my life. At the age of 18, my sister and I moved to New York to attend college. We lived in a small town in Pennsylvania, so there wasn't much prospect for the future, except to stay on my parents' farm and help with it, with the hope of one day inheriting this small piece of land. So the decision to move was made unanimously. We went to different colleges. My sister had been interested in literature since school days, so she chose journalism. I preferred the natural sciences, so I chose medicine. It was hard at first. A big city requires a lot of money, so each of us got a job. I became a sales assistant at a fashion boutique, and my sister was a bartender at a pretty popular club. We studied, worked, had fun, talked about everything, and enjoyed our new life. However, after 2 years of our life in New York, something happened that changed my life forever. What difficulties did you experience when moving to a new city? Loss of housing? Loss of work? I'd rather face it. One day, when I got home, I noticed my sister lying unconscious on the floor. At first, I thought she was pulling my leg, but I quickly realized she wasn't. I tried to bring her to her senses, but she wouldn't come to. And she was burning up. I was scared and called an ambulance, and they took her to the hospital. There, the doctor said that my sister had a severe form of pneumonia and that she urgently needed treatment. But there was one problem. The meds she needed were very expensive, and I didn't have that kind of money. I didn't want to bother my parents, and our family wasn't so rich. But what should I do? My sister was getting worse and worse, and the necessary amount was not available. I didn't always have enough money to pay for an apartment working as a sales assistant, and it was ridiculous to think about paying for my sister's treatment with this money. It was necessary to solve this problem quickly, and I decided to find a second job, and if necessary, even a third. However, where could I get a job to earn enough money quickly? And so I searched for a new job on the internet. I came across a vacancy for a model. They paid a lot, and I only had to pass the contest. It sounded dubious and suspicious. As typical ads of this type, quick earnings from $1,000 a day, but I didn't have much choice. And what are you willing to do to save someone close to you? I was ready for anything. I passed the contest easily. Even at school, I was the main beauty, and with age, I only got better. After a couple successful fashion shows, I got the right amount of money, paid for my sister's treatment, and she got better. However, I wasn't going to give up modeling. I was invited to fashion shows more and more often. Well-known brands offered to star in ads for their products, and the contracts got bigger and bigger. Money and popularity turned my head. I quit my old job and didn't go to college. One day, I got a call saying that if I kept missing class, I'd be expelled. In response, I told them to back off and said that I did not care about them and studying. I was invited to all the fashion shows, paid a lot of money, and my appearance was worshipped. Isn't that the dream of all girls? I came to a big city to conquer, and it obeyed me. That's what I thought at the time. But my happiness did not last long. One day, When I went to another show, I saw a model I didn't know who was wearing my outfit. I started to find out what was going on here, and it turned out that now she will be performing in my place. But how? This was supposed to be my finest hour. I was told that her appearance was currently more interesting to them, and she weighed only 40 kilograms. And for me, there were only a couple of performances left, and my career was over. I couldn't believe it. My money, my fame, my popularity, all this was taken from me by some upstart who came from nowhere and took my place. At the beginning of my career, a familiar model told me about a friend who sold pills with the larvae of special cockroaches for weight loss. At the moment, I just laughed. But right now, I didn't see any other way out. I decided that I would pay any price, give anything to get my dream job back. Did you do anything stupid in a difficult situation? Did you think that you were in a hopeless situation? I was disgusted because I hated insects. I was shaking, crying, and couldn't make up my mind for a long time. Although I had laughed at the idea that there was a larvae in the pills. Now I was sure it was true. Gathering my courage and holding back the urge to vomit, I swallowed first one tablet, then the second, and so on for the 6 pieces, thinking that if you took a large amount, then the effect would come faster. And so it turned out, 2 weeks later, I lost 8 kilograms. They took me back, saying I looked even better than I needed to. Only one thing bothered me. My sister used to tell me that I was pale and that I looked sick. But what did she know? Fame and career did not escape her. I told her abruptly that she was just jealous of me. I had achieved everything myself. How wrong I was. On the crucial day of the show, when my modeling fate was to be decided, I felt a strong pain in my stomach and nausea. I couldn't understand what was going on. I started digging in my backpack for a cure for the pain. And then I remembered about the weight loss pills that I had a month ago. What if the cockroach larvae grew, survived, and now lives in my stomach? I got scared. Why today? Why, with me, did I sacrifice a little for my success? These thoughts did not let me go. But more than that, I was just shaking. What was I going to do with the insect in my stomach? What if there were more of them and they ate me? Should I go to the hospital? No, I decided that the price I had paid for all my torment should not be wasted. And I took every ounce of willpower, neglected the pain in my stomach, and went to the podium. Halfway through it, the pain in my stomach went away, and just when I was happy about it, my head started to spin. Everything went blurry in my eyes, and I lost consciousness. I woke up in the hospital. I didn't understand what was happening, but the pain in my stomach was even worse than it had been before. The doctor stood next to me. I immediately began to cry and told him about how I wanted to lose weight, thought pills with larvae, and that now probably cockroaches lived in me and slowly ate me. The doctor looked at these pills, laughed, and explained everything to me. It turned out that there were no larvae in them. They were just phonies, and my stomach hurt because I hadn't eaten anything for almost a month and had been on a strict diet. My body was exhausted. So no one was eating me from the inside, and in general, there were no cockroaches that eat fat. And even if they did exist, they wouldn't survive in a human stomach. I was ashamed. I fell for this nonsense, lost my common sense because of my selfishness. A few hours later, my sister came to see me. When she saw me, she started to cry and begging me to quit modeling and stop killing myself. In that moment, I remembered how worried I had been about my sister when she was in the hospital, and that I had only become a model to save her, not for the sake of my career. Was that kind of career worth sacrificing yourself and your loved ones for? A week later, I got better. I quit modeling, went back to college, and got a job as a hospital nurse. My relationship with my sister improved, and we began to appreciate each other even more than before. And even though I had made a mistake that put our relationship at risk, we are now doing well and happy. I wish you not to make such mistakes and take care of your health. Like this video and tell your friends about it. Subscribe to our channel because there are many more interesting stories waiting for you here. Goodbye!
Hi, my name is Naomi. I'm 19. Have you ever made decisions where you were not just ashamed, but for which you felt guilty? Did you betray someone, cheated, or did you have a big fight with someone and now you regret it? My situation turned out to be much worse than all this. However, watch to the end and find out how I once wanted to kill my child. I'm just a normal student. I kept to myself. But when I went to medical university after school, I met nice people and became more open. Recently, one of my new friends, Kate, invited me to her wedding. Although I was a little jealous of her, I was genuinely happy for her and of course agreed to come to the ceremony. There were a lot of people at the wedding. The ceremony was by the sea, with rented land and houses. When I got there, I met a lot of people I knew. I was so happy to see everyone, especially my friend Leo. However, there was one other person for whom I had a special feeling. His name was Robert. He was my first boyfriend, whom I was dating in high school. I couldn't imagine ever meeting him again. We hadn't seen each other for 3 years. After we broke up, I became depressed. After a couple of years, I felt better when I found good friends, but I never met anyone else. Have you ever met someone from the past and felt helpless and confused, as if all your clothes were torn from your body? That's how I felt at that moment. Robert noticed me too, but we didn't say hello. I didn't show any interest in him. All through the ceremony, I tried to flirt ridiculously with other guys so that Robert would pay attention to me. Robert gave no sign to. He danced with all the bridesmaids in turn while pretending to like each one so much. He did it so unconvincingly. But I was drawn to him, I don't know why, either because of love or because he was really good. I went to the bathroom to calm down and figure out what I should do next to make him jealous. However, on the way, I met him in the corridor. My breath caught when I met him. Without even talking, we attacked each other with kisses and hugs. Already in the corridor, we began to undress each other. We locked ourselves in the toilet and had passionate sex. I hadn't felt such strong emotions since high school, and I tried to control myself after our breakup, and now I was making love to him. I was happy that we met again. And I got the idea that it was not just like that. I suggested that we get back together, but Robert got off the subject, said that he didn't want to complicate the situation, that he needed to think about it, and time would tell. I was upset when he said that. I quickly dressed and ran away from there like a little offended girl, but our meeting was not without additional problems. A couple of weeks later, I went cycling with my friends. I was a little confused after meeting Robert, so I agreed to go for a ride to distract myself. We drove along the road, heading for the park, but suddenly, on the way, I began to feel dizzy. I lost consciousness and fell off my bike right on the road. The cars braked sharply, which almost caused an accident. I woke up in the hospital. Kate and Leo from that group stayed and waited for me to get better. Leo held my hand tightly. The doctor came up to us and said that everything was fine, there were no injuries. However, I did not immediately understand when he said, "The uterus is not damaged, he is all right." I decided to clarify what the doctor meant. It was probably then that the doctor realized that I didn't know about my pregnancy, so he asked me if I wanted to find out about it in private, to which I agreed and my friends went out. When the doctor told me in detail about my situation, I was shocked. What? Was this Robert's child? How? This was impossible. No, this couldn't just be happening. My thoughts were not going to stop, and I still couldn't believe the news I'd heard from the doctor a few minutes ago. As soon as I felt better, I ran home. I didn't thank my friends or even say goodbye because I kept thinking about one thing. After closing all the doors and windows in my apartment, I ran to look for the phone number in my old texting with Robert. Eventually, I found it and started calling Rob, hoping that he hadn't changed his number. Have you ever felt that your body sometimes doesn't listen to you? As if all the functions of the body are mixed up like the wires in the system unit. That's what I felt. Rob answered. I started asking him how he felt about me so I could figure out what to do next. He said he couldn't talk for long right now. Like he was busy, but promised to call back in a week. When we hung up, I realized I couldn't rely on him. He would leave me again, and I would be depressed again. I decided to have an abortion. I took the gynecologist's number from a friend and made an appointment. During the conversation, my teeth chattered and my voice trembled. It was impossible to speak calmly on the phone. But I was pretty sure that abortion was the right thing to do. I didn't think Robert would want to take on that responsibility, and I couldn't raise a child on my own. After that, I fell into bed to sleep it off, and I had a dream. I was at the same Kate's wedding. All the guests were dancing. Everything was going about as it had been at the wedding. I was walking down the hall, and on the way, I suddenly felt sick. From a normal step, I switched to a light run, locked myself in the toilet, opened the toilet, and there I saw a baby floating in the water. He lay there, useless, crying. I took the baby out, wrapped it in paper towels, and put it in the stroller that was next to the sink. I was about to calm down, but I heard the baby crying again, this time in a different booth. I opened the toilet stall and saw a new baby, just as small and defenseless. The crying became audible everywhere. There was a baby in every toilet stall. They were crying, choking on water. To save them, I hurriedly tried to get all the children out of the water, wrapped them in a towel, put them in one stroller, which increased with each new child. But the children kept appearing and appearing. I woke up screaming from this nightmare. I ran to the bathroom in a sweat, stopped in front of the closed toilet, but now I was afraid to open it. The nausea passed immediately. I looked at the closed lid of the toilet, not daring to check if someone was there. Almost immediately, I heard the front doorbell ring. I jumped at the sharp sound and went to open the damn door. When I opened it, I saw Robert with a gorgeous bouquet of flowers. He gave it to me and kissed me. He quickly entered my apartment and undressed. I stopped him, although I was glad to see him, but at the moment, I was thinking of something else. I wanted to talk to him. Robert agreed. He sat down in a chair in his underwear, a smile on his face, taking a ridiculous but sexy pose. It was funny. I laughed a little and calmed down a little. I took 5 minutes to collect my thoughts, but Robert was already tired of sitting and waiting for me. I didn't know if I was going to tell Robert the truth. I forced myself to tell him everything he needed to know. I said that I was pregnant, but I warned that I was not going to leave a child and was going to have an abortion tomorrow. "Naomi, you're such a joke," he laughed. "You want to date again? But you use dirty tricks." I was surprised by his reaction. Did he think it was funny? I took the certificate out of my jeans and gave it to Robert. At the moment of reading, his face changed. Robert took out his wallet with shaking hands and asked how much money I needed. He took out $200 and shoved it into my hand. I knew Robert would probably react that way, but when I saw his reaction in person, I was disgusted. He looked so scared and pathetic. Was I in love with such a freak? I was hoping he would talk me out of this decision. I thought he would hug me and tell me we could handle it, but here it wasn't even close. "Get out," I hissed at Robert, then took his stuff and threw it out of the apartment. Then I kicked the guy out and threw the dirty money he gave me at this half-naked stranger. I locked the door and went to the bathroom. I was afraid to go to the toilet, but I overcame myself and abruptly opened the lid, but there was never anyone there. I closed the lid, sat down on the edge of the tub, and put my hand gently on my stomach. I had never been so sure of my choice as I was now. I was afraid to look at myself in the reflection of the water because it was my idea to kill the child. But I listened to my heart, left the baby, and no longer had contact with the guy I'd been in love with since high school. After these events, Leo began to help me, bought me food when I became ill, took me to the hospital. Now I'm dating him. He supports me and cares for me, and wants me to marry him. If you are touched by this story, then put a like and subscribe to the channel. Always listen to your heart.